I'm here with Malcolm Roberts from the Galileo movement. Can you please tell our YouTube watchers about the Galileo movement?
Sure, James, I'll be pleased to. The Galileo movement is formed with just one purpose in mind, and that's to axe the tax. But to do it in a way, James, that stops it forever, so it doesn't come back as some other entity. And we're going to do that, we are doing it by exposing the corruption of science and government.
What was the view of the Galileo movement regarding the apology that Lord Monckton gave?
Well, our two co-founders, they're both retired people. One's a retired scientist who's worked in the environment and in health, and the other's an award-winning engineer. And they both quickly disclaimed any association with the Nazi movement, and they were disappointed that Lord Monckton did that. And in fact, both the two founders, their previous exercise was in underwriting Lord Monckton's previous visit here. So they are very they're very respectful of Christopher Monckton. However, they did not like the comment, and they asked him to, they dissociated their movement from it, and they were very pleased with his apology, because it came so quickly, and so earnestly and so respectfully. That's one thing, you know, he's made a mistake, and he's admitted it. He said, fair cop, I shouldn't have done that.
How are you going to permanently keep carbon tax from wearing its head if it's defeated on this occasion? Exposing the corruption that's underpinning it. There's nothing there. It's complete corruption of science. Complete corruption. Gillard is not using only the science as the push issue. She's also using the idea of a so-called renewable energy. Could you please describe what renewable energy is?
You mean the provisions that are already raising electricity prices enormously?
Yes.
Okay, and what's happening there is that people don't realise it, but what's happening is that the providers of energy, by being forced to use renewable, which is very expensive, have to pass those costs on. So they pass it on to the consumer. Now the consumer then is paying more, and the people who are being, this is a very regressive step, because the consumer who can least afford it are the poor.
Can you describe what the general understanding of renewable energy is?
Well, renewable energy, it depends who you're talking to and which lobbyist is pushing his barrow. As I understand it, it's things like solar energy and wind energy, but they don't look at the consequences of using that energy, because and they paint them as being environmentally friendly. But if you want to look at the biggest impact of the human species on the environment, it's our sheer numbers of us. And the best way to reduce that is to reduce birth rates. And the way birth rates are reduced is by increasing economic wealth. The way you increase economic wealth is you increase productivity. The way you increase productivity is, guess what? You reduce the cost of energy. And so this movement that they're doing is the complete opposite of what our planet needs.
So there's an interesting parallel there, because Gillard is increasing the tax and receiving less tax receipts, 8.4 billion less receipts, according to Senator Barnaby Joyce, whilst in the process of increasing the taxes. And now she's planning another tax increase, which will obviously further lower the tax income base.
Well, how can you trust what this woman says or what this party says? We were told that it was the greatest moral challenge of our time, and then it was dropped. The woman who encouraged the previous Prime Minister to drop it is Julia Gillard. Julia Gillard then promised no tax before the election. After the election, she needed to stay in office. She then said she would have a tax, and not only a tax, but she would add to it with a carbon dioxide rationing scheme in 2015. You just can't trust them. They said, according to the press, that families in low income and middle income would be 100% reimbursed. Within 2 weeks, it was revealed it would be 50%. And then they promised to reimburse the major exporters, what do they call them? Export exposed industries. But the real problem, James, is the biggest employer of people in this country is small business. Now,
70%?
I don't know the figures. I know it's well over half. But small business will be facing increased costs because of the tax. And small business will be facing less revenue because they're taxing energy. And there's no coincidence about that. That's quite deliberate, because energy is inelastic. You must have it for your heating, for your driving, for getting to work and getting to school. So what it means is that as the prices increase, people keep buying it, which means they have less money to spend. as families. So that means small business revenue decreases. So small business is getting squeezed in the middle and no compensation for small business.
This is partly, here is it because big business loves higher tax, because big business has the liquidity to handle higher tax and knows that higher tax will destroy their competition with small business and enable them to merge and absorb small business.
I don't have the facts on that, so I try to make statements based on fact. It makes sense what you're saying, but I can't verify it. But no one is helped by a tax, because ultimately you and I and every consumer in this country, every family in this country pays that tax. Business doesn't hold it, it passes it on, except in the case of small business because they have to lump it.